Whispers of love and betrayal dance in the shadows of ambition. Li Weiwei stood backstage, her heart pounding in sync with the rhythm of the orchestra warming up for the night's performance at the National Ballet Theatre. Every twirl and leap on stage radiated her passion, yet her soul felt shackled by a secret that loomed over her like an oppressive cloud. For 7 years, she had been married to Zhang Jianyu, a powerful businessman with a charm wrapped in an enigmatic smile. They shared a life hidden from prying eyes, a bittersweet arrangement that demanded sacrifices she often found unbearable. This unpublicized union, while protecting her career from the stigma of a wife's duties, left her feeling incomplete, yearning for acknowledgement and love from the man who watched her success from the sidelines, but refused to share the stage of life with her. Every performance was a delicate blend of artistry and agony. She poured her heart into the dance, yet a longing ache remained unfulfilled. On opening night, she locked eyes with Zhang Jianyu in the audience, feeling both inspired and abandoned. His presence was a haunting reminder of the emptiness of their relationship. Despite his wealth and influence, he was a ghost in her life, his support often feeling like a cold, distant shadow as he kept their marriage secretive, lest it disrupt his public image. The thought of that secrecy twisted in her gut during her solo, isolating her from the applause she craved because it felt like a performance diluted by hidden truths. As the final curtain fell, Li Weiwei felt an unshakable resolve build within her. Was it time to finally shatter the silence? What if she could have it all? Her career and a life unshackled from deception. In a moment of boldness, she penned a letter, intending to express her desire to reveal their union to the world. Yet the anticipation was laced with fear. Would he allow it? Zhang Jianyu had always made it clear how important his reputation was, however, and the weight of that fact loomed heavily in her mind. The day of the announcement arrived, the tension palpable. With her heart racing, she stepped into the media spotlight, ready to express her truth to the world. But before she could utter a single word, her phone rang, Zhang Jianyu's name flashing ominously. A simple message, stark with finality, reduced her explosive courage to dust. "Do not embarrass me." In that moment, her dreams unraveled. She learned that she was merely a pawn in his game, a dancer meant to be seen, but not to shine alone. Days turned into a whirlwind of scandal and humiliation as Li Weiwei found herself discarded. Zhang Jianyu shamelessly replaced her with Liu Xinyi, his mistress, who basked in the accolades Li Weiwei had poured years of dedication into achieving. The media fawned over the new, perfect couple, while Li Weiwei's reputation was ripped to shreds. Accused of being an imposter, she became the target of public ridicule. Each day felt like a wound ripped open anew. Yet in the silence following the storm of ridicule, a quiet strength ignited within her. One fateful evening, gathering courage from the depths of her despair, she returned to the theater, the very place that had once felt like home, the same stage where whispers of her talent had turned into applause. The audience was different this time, filled with curiosity and skepticism, yet yearning to understand. As the lights dimmed, they all awaited a show from the imposter. Instead, she presented a raw, emotional performance that spoke of betrayal and rediscovery. Each pirouette turned into an act of defiance. Each jump told her story of resilience. When she finished, the audience awoke from their stupor, applause erupting like thunder. The world that once scorned her began to see her truth. Tears streamed down her face, not just from relief, but from the cathartic release of years of imprisoned emotion. The performance wove a tapestry of her journey, illuminating the darkness that had once engulfed her. As she stepped off that stage, the applause echoing behind her, she made a choice. Her past with Zhang Jianyu ended tonight. She wrote him a letter that would not be read until after she was gone, a farewell to the man who never understood her worth. With her heart reawakened, Li Weiwei stepped into a new life, leaving behind the weight of betrayal as she embraced a future filled with hope, identity, and the promise of genuine love, this time acknowledging her worth. Meanwhile, Zhang Jianyu stood in the shadows of the theater, his face reflecting the harsh light of realization. He had lost not just a wife, but the light of passion he had failed to see. Li Weiwei had danced her way to freedom. His regrets would haunt him long after the curtains fell on this chapter of their lives. Some secrets are like shadows, forever lurking, consuming the light of truth. Li Weiwei adjusted her ballet slippers in the dimly lit dressing room of the National Ballet Theatre, glancing nervously at the mirror. Tonight's performance was crucial. The weight of years of hard work bore down on her. Yet, behind her poised exterior, a storm brewed within. She was a gifted ballerina climbing her way to the top, but she was also a hidden wife. Her heart ached with the burden of secrecy, kept from the world's gaze to protect both her career and her marriage to Zhang Jianyu, a powerful businessman whose desire for discretion overshadowed their bond. Flashbacks flickered through her mind like the strobe of stage lights, reminding her of happier moments. In a sunlit park, they once shared laughter over ice cream, the world around them fading into a blur. They had whispered dreams of success and love, while the shadows of her reality lingered at the edges of her joy. But every time she would glimpse that happy future, Zhang's insistence on secrecy would wrap around her like a vice, squeezing until she couldn't breathe. As she rehearsed, those moments felt like fragmented glass, beautiful yet shattered, cutting deep into her soul. At the annual dance gala, the excitement in the air surged, and Li Weiwei watched as the spotlight glimmered, igniting her spirit. It was a fateful evening, filled with potential, a night of celebration where her talent would shine. But then, an unexpected twist shattered her fragile resolve. Zhang Jianyu entered the venue with Liu Xinyi, the company's bright new star. Li Weiwei's heart dropped, taken by an unrelenting wave of betrayal as Zhang leaned in closer to Liu, their chemistry palpable. A deep rage surged within her, but she buried it beneath layers of professionalism. The audience had no idea that the woman in that spotlight was crumbling inside. "I can still do this," she whispered to herself, a mantra born of desperation. She danced through the night, each movement punctuated by the ache of unrecognized love. The applause that followed felt hollow, like an echo of what she truly desired, the warmth of Zhang's approval, and the assurance that she mattered beyond the realm of dance. But she knew he was out there, eyes on Liu Xinyi, drawing admiration from those around him. A moment of care from her fellow dancers broke through her storm. Mei, her closest companion, noticed her distress. "You've worked too hard to let anyone make you feel small," Mei encouraged, her tone fierce with conviction. "You need to show him who you are, not just in the shadows." That sentiment ignited a flicker of rebellion within Li Weiwei. It was time to reclaim her narrative, not just as a dancer, but as a woman deserving of love and respect. In the days leading up to the gala, tension simmered as Li Weiwei prepared for her biggest performance yet. The stunning choreography required all her focus, but each pirouette felt like a violent spin back to Zhang's rejection. The evening unfolded like a bittersweet dream, the stage shimmering with expectations. As the curtain rose, Li's heart raced, her spirit danced alongside her, an embodiment of resilience forged through pain. With each step, she reflected on her marriage and the shadows it cast. She poured every ounce of her emotion into the dance, angles sharp and lines perfect, determined to evoke a breathtaking moment of clarity. Her performance climaxed in a solo that twisted through the air, embodying her inner torment and hidden strength. The audience, captivated, began to feel her anguish, her longing for something, anything, beyond the facade. As she executed her final position, the world faded into silence, a stillness that felt like a reprieve. The applause erupted, but Li Weiwei's heart pangs clashed with the triumphant cheers, leaving her feeling both vindicated and lost. In that defiant moment, she sought Zhang in the crowd, only to find him gazing at Liu Xinyi, oblivious to the transformation that had just occurred. With newfound resolve, she stepped away from the stage's spotlight, feeling adrift yet empowered. "I am not just a dancer. I am me," she whispered to the shadows that had once consumed her. There was a flicker of hope. She was finally ready to confront Zhang and their hidden life together. The path wouldn't be easy, but in that moment of clarity, clouded in self-discovery, Li Weiwei understood her worth. The night had not just changed her performance, it had awakened the woman she was always meant to be. As she exited the theater, she felt the weight of the world lift. Though the road ahead was uncertain, and she still grappled with the remnants of her heartache, the light of possibility shone brightly. She was determined to move forward, not as a hidden wife, but as Li Weiwei, the dancer, the woman, and the force of her own destiny. The weight of hidden truths can either shatter a heart or set it free. Li Weiwei stood in front of the full-length mirror in her ballet studio, the soft shine of the wooden floor reflecting both her image and the years that settled on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. Her body was grace personified, each muscle a testament to her dedication as a ballerina, yet the mirror revealed more than just a dancer. It mirrored a woman torn between ambition and an unseen life, suffocated by secrecy. The swirling tensions in her marriage to Zhang Jianyu loomed dangerously close to the surface, threatening to fracture her carefully constructed world. Encouraged by her closest friend, Mei, Li Weiwei felt a flicker of hope spark inside her, a notion that perhaps she could reclaim her identity, both as an artist and as a woman. "You deserve to be loved openly, Weiwei," Mei would remind her insistently, her eyes shining with fierce loyalty. Li had dreamed of a life where she could take a bow, not just as a solo artist, but as a beloved wife in the spotlight, standing confidently alongside Zhang, unashamed of their relationship. Yet the specter of doubt hovered relentlessly. How would he react to her wishes? Would the world invalidate her experience, mock her for balancing her ambition with a hidden life? The idea of retiring from the dance company to finally reveal her marriage felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Sitting in her favorite cafe, the smell of strong coffee and baked pastries filling the air, she shared her plans with Mei, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if they don't accept me? What if Zhang doesn't support me?" The tremor in her tone betrayed her anxiety, but Mei reached across the table, squeezing Li Weiwei's hand gently. "Whatever happens, you have to be true to yourself." Despite the encouragement, uncertainty gripped Li's heart as the date of the gala approached. In the days leading up to the performance, she immersed herself in practice, her movements more fervent than ever. But in the back of her mind loomed the image of Zhang with Liu Xinyi, intensifying her fears. Each pirouette became more than just dance. They became a plea to be seen and validated not only as a performer, but as the wife she longed to be. On the night of the gala, the auditorium buzzed with excitement. Dignitaries and art lovers filled the seats, the energy palpable, crackling like electricity. Li Weiwei entered the stage under the glowing lights, a perfect facade crafted from thin strands of anxiety and ambition. As she began her performance, the music swelled around her, lifting her spirits even as she felt Zhang's absence like an aching wound. The notes reverberated through her, a reminder of all she had endured in silence. Then, mid-performance, her heart lurched as her gaze fell upon Zhang, standing not far from the edge of the stage, effortlessly charming Liu Xinyi, who nuzzled into his side, enthralled by his confidence and charm. The jarring sight twisted in Li Weiwei's chest, a violent contrast to the delicate art of dance. In that split second, her strong facade crumbled, despair swallowing the vibrant energy she normally exuded. But as her final dance approached, something shifted within her. The haunting betrayal transformed, igniting her spirit. Instead of retreating, she decided to turn that pain into strength. Channeling every raw emotion into her finale, she danced not only for herself, but for every moment she felt unseen and unheard. The audience could feel the transformation. They rose with emotion as she poured her heart out unfiltered, granting them a glimpse into her truth. After the applause erupted and the curtain fell, Li Weiwei stood breathless, heart pounding not with fear, but with raw empowerment. She searched the crowd for Zhang, ready for confrontation, ready to finally voice her truth, but he was nowhere to be seen. Instead, Mei rushed to her side, pride glistening in her eyes. "You were incredible, Weiwei. You were yourself tonight," she exclaimed, wrapping her arms around her. A new resolve solidified inside Li Weiwei. She would not allow fear or doubt to steal her identity anymore. She would speak with Zhang, lay bare her heart, and demand the recognition and love she always deserved. With each step outside the theater, she felt lighter. The night had unveiled more than just her talent. It had illuminated her path to self-discovery, hinting at the potential for growth and changes to come. As she walked into the night, the city lights twinkling above like old stars filled with promises yet to unfold, Li Weiwei envisioned a future where she connected with her true self without fear, fully alive, fully present, and finally ready to live in the truth of who she was, embraced by love that would not hide in the shadows. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt hopeful, kissed by the glow of newfound strength and purpose. Love can be the most exquisite form of betrayal. As Li Weiwei stood backstage on the night of her farewell performance at the National Ballet Theatre, her heart raced with a tumultuous mix of excitement and fear. The air was thick with anticipation. The audience buzzed like an electric current, and the weight of the moment pressed down on her shoulders. She had spent years pouring every ounce of herself into her art, and tonight she intended to reveal the truth that had been a closely guarded secret for far too long. This would be her final bow, not just as a dancer, but as the woman she had always wanted to be, unveiled and unapologetically herself. With the stage lights warming her skin, Li Weiwei danced like a flame, each movement a brushstroke, painting her passion across the canvas of the void. The audience leaned forward, enraptured by her fluidity, captivated by the stories woven into the fabric of her performance. Yet, as she twirled and leapt, the core of her energy drew from the very secrets she planned to unleash. With every pirouette, she stole glances toward the wings, searching for Zhang Jianyu. He had promised to be there, but doubt niggled at her with each passing second. When the final notes of her last dance floated away, a stillness enveloped the theater. The audience erupted into applause, but it was the warmth of that moment that pushed her to speak. She took a deep breath, heart racing, and stepped forward into the spotlight after the last bow, her voice trembling yet resolute. "Tonight, I wish to share something personal. My marriage to Zhang Jianyu." The words hung in the air, both a declaration and a confession. It has been a source of joy, but also of pain, hidden away from the world to protect our lives. No more shadows, for this is who I truly am. Just as the audience began to process her revelation, she heard a cold, cutting voice interrupting her euphoria. Zhang's silhouette emerged from the darkened stage. "It costs too much, Weiwei. Your reveal will cost you everything." The cruelty in his words sent shockwaves through the crowd. Li Weiwei's heart sank as a chilling realization settled in. The man she had loved and trusted was destined not to be her champion, but her betrayer. Zhang continued, his demeanor chilling and indifferent. "From this moment, our marriage is over. Liu Xinyi will take your place in the company." The warmth that had enveloped her moments ago was transformed into the icy grip of despair. Liu Xinyi, his protégé, the same rising star who had elbowed her way into her life, now set to bask in the spotlight that Li had fought so hard to claim. The audience's applause faded into a haunting silence, confusion mixing with pity as shock rippled through the theater. Li Weiwei stood frozen, the world around her spinning. The reality of her public humiliation set like a stone in her chest. "You betrayed me," she whispered, her voice thick with disbelief. "You let me believe we could." "Believe what?" Zhang snapped, casting her a disdainful look. "That you could have it all? My reputation matters, Weiwei, and I can't stand by while you unravel it." As his words sank into her, Li Weiwei felt the fragile dream she had nurtured collapse under the weight of his indifference. The life she envisioned, a partnership in the spotlight, surrounded by affection and acknowledgement, was ripped away in a matter of moments. She turned away, tears blurring her vision. How could someone she had loved, someone she had trusted, so easily transform into a stranger before her eyes? As she fled the stage, the searing sting of betrayal ignited a fire within her. She had worked so hard, sacrificed so much, yet she had never truly stood up for herself. How many more performances would she dance if she remained in his shadow? Determined not to allow this moment to define her life, she vowed that she would reclaim her identity, not just as an artist, but as a woman deserving of respect. Backstage, surrounded by the thrum of applause that felt oddly distant, Li Weiwei caught May's eye. Her friend rushed forward, enveloping her in a warm embrace. "You were incredible out there, Weiwei. You showed everyone who you are." "But at what cost?" Weiwei replied, her heart heavy. "The cost is not yours to bear alone," May urged, her voice steady. "This is your chance to break free. Don't let him take away your power." With that flicker of hope rekindled, Li Weiwei stepped toward the exit, her heart still pounding like a drum. The finality of her farewell performance no longer filled her with dread. Instead, it had opened a new chapter she was fiercely determined to embrace. She was more than the hidden wife. She was a ballerina ready to reclaim the stage. The journey ahead was unwritten, filled with challenges and opportunities alike. Yet Li Weiwei was ready to turn the page. This time, on her own terms. The truth that sets you free can also be the truth that binds you forever. Li Weiwei sat on the edge of her bed, the weight of the world pressing down on her chest as she stared blankly at the wall, now devoid of the dreams that once filled it. Just days ago, she had been the luminous star of the National Ballet Theatre, poised to cement her rightful place in the world. Now she found herself expelled from the company, labeled by society as an imposter, while her ex-husband Zhang Jianyu twisted the narrative, painting himself as the victim and moving on with Liu Xinyi in a lavish display of love that the media adored. The fallout from her public reveal had plunged her into a chasm of despair, where the echoes of her own voice were silenced beneath the weight of relentless criticism. Each morning brought a new wave of articles slandering her name, the headlines sharp like daggers. Once adoring fans turned their backs, leaving only whispers of disdain in their wake. Li Weiwei was never a true artist, they said, drowning out the memories of her countless performances that had once moved them to tears. Public opinion churned like a tempest, and in its fury, it stripped her of her dignity piece by piece. "How could you betray him?" they demanded, as if her vulnerability had been a deceit against Zhang rather than a search for authenticity. Within the chaos, the loneliness engulfed her. Li Weiwei's friends had scattered, unsure of how to console her without stepping into the political battlefield of their public disgrace. Only May remained, her unwavering support a beacon in the darkness. "You are not defined by what they say, Weiwei. You are still an incredible dancer," May reassured her, placing a hand on Li Weiwei's shoulder. Yet every compliment felt like a heavy stone against the backdrop of her spiraling life. As duty plagued her soul, the sanctuary of her art became tainted. Dancing, once an escape, evolved into a cruel reminder of her lost identity. She tried to practice at the small community studio, but even the softness of classical music felt foreign. Each pirouette she attempted echoed the specter of Zhang's betrayal, pulling her deeper into self-doubt. Flashbacks haunted her, the happiness they once shared, the promises whispered late at night, the dreams they built while oblivious to the truth lurking beneath their marriage. One fateful day, amid her despair, she discovered an unexpected twist. In an online forum filled with chatter about her fall from grace, whispers of a burgeoning movement began to take root. Dancers and aspiring artists, rallying behind Li Weiwei's story, shared their own experiences of struggle against an often cruel industry. "Let's reclaim our narratives," one comment read, sparking a growing sense of community. Hope flickered within her for the first time in weeks, urging her to rise again. Determined, she joined forces with these brave souls, forging a plan to harness their collective power. A performance was set, one that would bring together those who felt marginalized. As they rehearsed, the atmosphere shifted. It became a space of healing, laughter, and understanding. Li Weiwei dug deep, pouring her pain into the choreography, channeling every moment of lost promise into a final display of defiance. During the eve of the performance, the theater buzzed, and the energy electrified the air. Li Weiwei stepped onto the stage, not as a victim, but as a woman who had found her voice in the shadows of betrayal. When she danced, it was not for applause or vindication, but as a proclamation of her struggles, her resilience, and her refusal to surrender to the narrative that had consumed her. Every step resonated with emotional catharsis. Each leap carried the weight of collective stories. As the finale approached, tears streamed down her face, not of grief, but of empowerment, while the audience erupted into applause, no longer mere spectators, but partakers in her journey. At that perfect moment, a glimpse of hope illuminated her path forward, igniting the possibility of a future where she was not defined by others' perceptions. Afterward, as congratulations filled the air, Li Weiwei stepped backstage, heart racing with a mix of pride and still lingering sorrow. The journey was far from over. She knew that rebuilding her life would take time. Yet, as the cheers continued, she felt a sense of self emerging that she had long thought lost. With Mei by her side, she took a deep breath, understanding that while Zhang may have left her, he could never take her. From that day forward, Li Weiwei embraced the uncertainty. There would be uphill battles, but she was ready to face the world, no longer an imposter, but a survivor. Reborn in the journey ahead would be her own, was determined to reclaim it. One graceful. Sometimes the darkest moments ignite the brightest flames. Li Weiwei sat silently in her small, dimly lit apartment, the muted glow from the streetlights illuminating the sadness etched across her face. The world outside was filled with laughter and life, but inside, isolation wrapped around her like a heavy shroud. Only a week had passed since her expulsion from the National Ballet Theatre, a devastating blow that turned her once celebrated career into a tale of shame and humiliation. Outside her window, neighbors whispered and pointed, branding her an imposter, while they applauded her former husband, Zhang Jianyu, who had quickly remarried Liu Xinyi in a grand ceremony. In the midst of her despair, Mei, her childhood friend and unwavering source of support, rushed into the apartment, her presence like a breath of fresh air. Without hesitation, she wrapped Li Weiwei in a warm embrace, offering solace. "You can't let them define you, Weiwei," she urged, a firmness in her tone that caught Li's attention. "You have to let go of the past and find your way back." As they sat together, surrounded by echoes of dreams and shattered illusions, Li Weiwei felt a spark of determination ignite within her. "Dance has always been my escape," Li whispered, memories flooding back like waves crashing on a shore. Flashbacks unveiled her childhood, where the world beneath her feet pulsed with music. Little Li, wearing a simple tutu, would twirl in her living room, following the rhythm of songs playing on an old radio. She recalled the laughter shared with Mei as they mimicked their favorite routines, dreams of stages and red curtains wrapping around them like a warm embrace. Dance was not merely an art. It was her lifeline, a way to express emotions anchored deep within her heart. Mei listened intently, coaxing more memories to surface. "What did you always want?" she prompted gently. Li's brows furrowed as she thought hard, unearthing her aspirations buried under layers of shame and confusion. "To prove that I could be the best, not just a shadow in someone else's life," she admitted, tears glistening in her eyes. With renewed vigor, Mei turned the conversation toward their future. "What if we organize a showcase, something that highlights your talent and the passion behind it? You can share your story through dance." The idea resonated in the air, vibrant and alive, and for the first time since her downfall, a flicker of hope danced in Li Weiwei's heart. Maybe it could work, she mused, allowing herself to imagine the way it might feel to reclaim her identity and share the truth. As they mapped out the details, excitement replaced the sorrow that once consumed her. Hours melted away as they meticulously planned, envisioning a project that highlighted the spirit of resilience and empowerment. From that day forward, Li Weiwei poured herself into rehearsals with tenacity, fueled by the knowledge that her art was worth fighting for. Day after day, she sacrificed sleep and comfort, her muscles aching but her heart steadfast. Mei remained at her side, her unwavering encouragement nudging Li toward growth. Then came the day of the showcase, a warm night filled with expectation and nerves. The venue buzzed with the chatter of attendees, people curious about Li Weiwei's return to the stage. As the lights dimmed and the music swelled, the anxiety gripping Li's heart morphed into exhilaration. The curtain rose, revealing Li Weiwei standing center stage, the spotlight casting an ethereal glow around her. She was not just a dancer now. She was a formidable force, channeling the pain and isolation she had endured into a breathtaking fusion of movement and emotion. Every leap echoed the whispers of her childhood dreams, while every turn intertwined her determination with the intricacies of her story. When the final note faded and the audience erupted into applause, she stood, breathless and radiant. Tears of relief shimmered in her eyes, not of past regrets, but of newfound freedom. She had transformed her pain into powerful art, sharing her truth with those who had come to witness her vulnerability. In that moment, she reclaimed her narrative, defining herself beyond the shackles of public opinion. As the crowd continued to cheer, May rushed to her side, pride shining in her eyes. "You did it, Weiwei! You found your way back!" With a tight embrace, they celebrated not just the performance, but the victory over adversity. While the road ahead would still hold challenges, Li Weiwei felt prepared to face them. She was finally on a journey toward rediscovery, and the essence of her passion had resurfaced, promising brighter days ahead. With May by her side, she embraced the uncertainty of the future, ready to dance not just for validation, but for the sheer love of art, an affirmation of her spirit that could never be extinguished. The echoes of betrayal can only be silenced by the sound of one's own heartbeat. Li Weiwei stood in front of the mirror. The reflection staring back at her was one of defiance, no longer merely a victim cloaked in humiliation. After her painful expulsion from the National Ballet Theatre and the ignominious fallout of her marriage to Zhang Jianyu, she had resolved to reclaim her life. No longer would she allow the shadow of his betrayal to dictate her identity. With her heart pounding resolutely, she began to embrace her path as a freelancer, ready for whatever awaited her in the competitive world of dance. The studios were filled with light and laughter, but beneath the surface, the unspoken tension was palpable. As she stepped into various spaces, Li Weiwei felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Dancers buzzed around her, some casting quick glances filled with both admiration and skepticism. She noticed the catty remarks from a few, jealous whispers that echoed from behind closed doors, wondering aloud if she'd ever truly had the talent or if it was all just a product of Zhang's influence. Each brusque dismissal would send a jolt of insecurities through her, but she was determined to rise above it all. While she faced the challenges head-on, moments of beauty and grace emerged. In rehearsals, she poured her heart into every leap and spin, finding herself in the rhythm of the music. One day, while at a community dance showcase, a renowned choreographer happened to be in the audience. He approached her after the performance, his eyes lit with a spark of recognition. "You have a rare talent, Li Weiwei. I'd like to work with you," he said, extending an opportunity that felt tantamount to the revival of her dreams. This unexpected twist filled her with renewed strength. With each freelance performance, she began to carve out her own identity apart from Zhang, impressing choreographers who could finally see her for who she truly was, an artist on the brink of evolution. Under the bright stage lights, she danced her heart out, every movement fueled by the memories of her past and the pain that had once held her captive. But the relentless reminders of her past kept surfacing, shadows trailing her as she navigated new opportunities. Each time she stepped into a studio, she could feel Zhang's presence looming behind her, alongside the vibrant laughter of Liu Xinyi that felt sharper than any knife. At moments, when Li Weiwei would hear their names mentioned, her heart would contract painfully. Zhang, moving through the world effortlessly, unmarred by the chaos he had created. Despite this, she resolved to confront her insecurities, using them as energy rather than crutches. One afternoon, as she practiced in a spacious studio, a fellow dancer approached her with an air of bravado. "I heard you're trying to dance your way back into the spotlight. Don't you think you're just chasing shadows?" The comment landed like a blow, igniting old wounds. For an instant, her resolve wavered, but as she watched herself in the mirror, something shifted. "No," she replied coolly, confidence swelling within her. "I'm not chasing shadows, I'm creating my own light." That statement became a mantra, guiding her through moments of vulnerability. With each performance, she not only showcased her talents, but also reflected her journey of rebirth. Surrounded by supportive dancers who recognized her value, Li Weiwei grew in strength and artistry. A community began to take shape around her, lifting each other up as they navigated the harsh realities of a competitive world together. The climax of her awakening arrived at a major showcase, where her talent would finally be seen on a grand stage. The anticipation buzzed through the air, and as she stepped onto that stage, the soft glow of the lights enveloped her, igniting her spirit. For several minutes, she danced with a fervor that spoke of resilience, transforming her pain into an ethereal performance that wrapped itself around the audience like the softest silk. When the final note resonated, an electric silence washed over the crowd before a roaring applause filled the void. Li Weiwei stood, breathless but victorious, tears pricking her eyes. The appreciation and support enveloped her like a warm embrace, reminding her that she had reclaimed her narrative, crafting a story defined by her will to overcome adversity. As she stepped off the stage, exhilaration coursed through her veins. Though challenges remained ahead, she stood ready to face them. No longer a prey to the shadows of her past, Li Weiwei was a dancer rediscovered, her path illuminated by her own fierce light. Embracing the power of her journey, she smiled, knowing the road was still uncharted. But this time, she was carving it on her own terms. In that moment of triumph, it was clear she was not merely surviving, she was thriving. In the dance of life, vulnerability can be the greatest strength. Li Weiwei stood backstage, heart racing in rhythm with the pulsating energy of the audience just beyond the curtain. The stage before her was set for a prestigious showcase, the kind that could launch a dancer's career into the stratosphere. It was a place where dreams were realized, and where nightmares could echo. After the tumultuous journey following her public downfall, this was her chance to reclaim not only her passion, but also her identity. As she positioned herself, the flickering stage lights above reminded her of the darkness she had been pulled from. Zhang Jianyu's betrayal still loomed in her memory, a haunting presence that questioned everything she had fought against. The applause and admiration she had once craved felt distant, replaced with memories of manipulation that had marred her trust. In this moment, however, she vowed not to shy away from the truth. Lai closed her eyes and recalled every painful memory with clarity, the feeling of being silenced, the weight of expectations, and the longing for freedom. Each thought transformed into movement, fueling her choreography with raw emotion. Over the past weeks, she had poured herself into creating a piece that articulated her journey of heartbreak, resilience, and self-discovery. This wouldn't just be a performance, it would be a catharsis, an unveiling of the layers of pain that had stifled her spirit for so long. As the music began, Li Weiwei stepped onto the stage, the spotlight illuminating her with a blinding brilliance. She felt the audience's gaze like a tide, both intimidating and inviting. Each note swept through her, igniting memories she had worked so hard to channel into grace. The choreography unfolded like a narrative, her movements fluid yet punctuated with the weight of sorrow. The sharp angles of her arms depicted the tension of restraint, while the soft, sweeping lines expressed her yearning for liberation. Every leap and turn was infused with the truth of her broken marriage. The night spent wondering if she was enough, the constant judgments echoing in her mind. With each graceful arc, she danced not only for herself but for all those who had ever felt constrained by someone else's desire to control. The audience watched, captivated by her vulnerability, as she bared her soul through movement. In the crescendo of the performance, emotions surged through her. It was a moment of revelation, a twisting leap that mirrored her fiercest hopes, colliding with her darkest fears. The very movement told the story of a woman breaking free, casting aside the chains that held her back. She could almost hear the whispers that had plagued her vanish into the rafters, swallowed by the pockets of silence created by the breathless crowd. But just as the last high note rang out, Li spotted Zhang Jianyu seated in the front row, a sardonic smile plastered on his face as he leaned in closely to Liu Xinyi, who clapped vigorously. The sight stung, a sudden reminder of the betrayal she thought she had been able to evade. It brought a moment of doubt, the urge to falter, to let the weight of the past crush her in front of everyone. But she steeled herself and continued, fueled by the conviction she'd cultivated over the last months, transforming bitterness into artistry. As she concluded her performance, the audience erupted into applause, but the roar around her felt different this time. It resounded with acceptance and, more importantly, recognition. Li Weiwei beamed with a newfound confidence, grateful for the opportunity to share her story unapologetically. She had turned her pain into beauty, rewriting the ending she once thought was set in stone. The lights dimmed, but amidst the chaos of applause, Zhang's expression shifted from smugness to surprise. In that instant, she understood. No longer did he wield the power to define her worth. Stepping off the stage, she felt the air fill with a lightness. Freedom was not just a dream, but a reality she had fought to create. Though the path ahead was uncertain, she moved forward with determination, ready to embrace whatever came next. After the performance, as the audience buzzed with excitement, she locked eyes with Mei, her faithful friend whose unwavering support had never faltered. Together, they stood, united in a world that seemed a little brighter, knowing that this was just the beginning of a new chapter filled with possibilities, where Li Weiwei would dance not just for validation, but for the joy of being truly alive. In the world of dance, every story tells a truth, and Li Weiwei was finally ready to reveal hers. The stage lights shone brightly, illuminating her tear-streaked face as she stood at the center of the theater, the applause of the audience washing over her like a warm summer rain. It was a moment she had long yearned for, a moment where she could reclaim her narrative and share her truth, not just as a dancer, but as a woman who had suffered betrayal and emerged stronger. The atmosphere in the theater was electric. The murmurs of admiration and awe rippled through the crowd like a gentle current. Li Weiwei had poured every ounce of her heart into her performance, infusing her choreography with the raw emotions of her past, a journey through pain, resilience, and self-discovery. It had taken weeks to mold her experience into art, letting go of her fear and embracing the memories that had haunted her. As she danced, the weight of her hidden struggles found release through every leap and spin. With each movement, she shared her story, the manipulation, the heartbreak, and ultimately the triumph of finding herself again. As the final note hung in the air, the applause grew deafening, filling the space around her with a palpable energy. Tears streamed down her cheeks, not merely of sorrow, but of immense pride and vindication. She had bared her soul to strangers, and in return, they recognized her vulnerability as strength. This was more than an applause. It was a statement. She was no longer just Zhang Jianyu's ex-wife. She was Li Weiwei, a force of nature. As the last echoes of clapping subsided, the theater was enveloped in an expectant silence. It was here, under the glowing lights, that she felt a profound sense of purpose rising within her. With a steadying breath, she stepped forward, grasping the microphone with hands that trembled with emotion. Tonight, I stand before you not just as a dancer, but as a woman who has fought to be seen. I urge young dancers around the world to embrace their identities, no matter the pressures to hide or conform. Dance from the heart, and never let anyone control your narrative. The words flowed from her like a cathartic release, and the audience responded with thunderous applause, their appreciation echoing in her ears. But amidst the swell of admiration, a twist of anxiety fluttered in her chest. How would Zhang Jianyu react to this bold declaration? Would the world accept her newfound identity, or would she once again be pulled into the shadows of past betrayals? In that moment, as she surveyed the audience, she felt liberated. No matter the fallout, she was committed to her truth. She realized that the opinions of others no longer held power over her life. Instead of fear, the spotlight now ignited her passion, illuminating a path she would forge on her own terms. The aftermath of her performance radiated through the theater, capturing the attention of the media. Articles flooded the headlines, declaring Li Weiwei a phoenix rising from the ashes of disgrace. Striking photographs portrayed the intensity of her dance alongside her powerful speech. And slowly, the narrative began to shift. No longer would she be remembered only as a victim of circumstance. The world was awakening to the depth of her talent and her struggle. In the days that followed, Li Weiwei met with choreographers and producers, intrigued by her story. Collaborations flourished as she showcased her work in various performances, garnering respect for her talent and determination. Yet even in this success, whispers of doubt sometimes clawed at her. The memories of Zhang Jianyu's disdain and the way the industry treated her before loomed like distant ghosts. But each rehearsal, each new stage she stepped onto, became a reaffirmation of her strength. She surrounded herself with passionate artists, young dancers, resilient and hungry for authenticity. Together, they formed a community that valued individuality over conformity, understanding the struggles faced in a demanding industry. As she continued to dance, Li Weiwei remembered her core mission: to advocate for those still silenced, those who felt marginalized. She began mentoring young dancers, sharing not only techniques, but also tales of her journey, urging them to reject deceit and embrace their true selves. Her heart swelled as she watched them flourish, each a reflection of her own growth. The support of this new family reminded her that strength multiplied when shared. In the weeks that followed, the media's focus shifted slowly. Zhang Jianyu's image suffered from the neglect of a narrative that no longer served him. He became a distant memory overshadowed by Li Weiwei's newfound light. As she took center stage, she recognized that the applause was not for who she had lost, but a celebration of who she had become. Standing tall, both literally and metaphorically, Li Weiwei danced not just for herself, but for every soul who dared to reclaim their story, turning pain into power and silence into song. In the resonance of each performance, she found hope, connection, and a promise of brighter tomorrows. In the dance of life, every ending can be a beautiful beginning. Following her triumphant return to the stage, Li Weiwei found herself immersed in an exhilarating whirlwind of opportunities. Dancers and choreographers from various renowned companies approached her, captivated by her performance that had laid bare the depths of her pain and strength. With each offer, a new chapter unfolded, each more promising than the last. At long last, the spotlight was hers, and the stage felt like home again. Yet even as excitement enveloped her, doubt crept in like an unwelcome shadow. The echoes of her past relationship with Zhang Jianyu, once a defining part of her identity, lingered in the corners of her mind. His dismissal of her talent and his betrayal had left deep scars that still ached beneath the surface. Although Li's artistic journey took her forward, the weight of unresolved emotions threatened to hold her back. In quiet moments, she resisted the urge to look back, knowing that she had to let go completely to truly embrace this new life. Late one night, as the city lights flickered softly outside her window, she felt a sudden surge of clarity. The time had come to sever ties with the pain that had bound her. Sitting cross-legged on her bed, she grabbed a pen and paper, her heart racing as she began to write. With each word flowing from her, she offered herself the closure she had long been missing. "Dear Zhang," she penned, her emotions flooding the page. "I have finally found my voice again, and I no longer need your shadow hanging over me. I choose to let go of our past and the hurt it caused. This letter is my declaration of independence." Each line was steeped in honesty and strength. Li Weiwei poured everything into those pages, her disappointments, her realization of self-worth, and her desire to heal completely. As she concluded the letter, tears streamed down her face. Not out of sadness, but relief, like a river finally breaking free from a dam. In revealing her true feelings to Zhang, she also revealed parts of herself to herself. The act of writing became a ritual of liberation. She felt lighter, knowing that she could close that door behind her with finality. The next day, she placed the letter in an envelope, drawn to a sense of closure that had long eluded her. That symbolic act of letting go left her brimming with newfound resolve. With each passing day, the applause from the audience, the praise from colleagues, and the warmth of her friends enveloped her. She stepped into the studios with confidence, her past fading like distant whispers. Her transformation didn't go unnoticed. As she shared her journey, she became a beacon of hope for aspiring dancers. Through her performances, she began to advocate for the unfiltered expression of identity, urging her peers to embrace their truths and reject the pressures to conform. Her story was no longer just about overcoming betrayal. It became a message of empowerment. The day finally came when she stood backstage, preparing for her first official performance as a principal dancer. The exhilaration surged through her, mixing with a hint of nerves. The anticipation was exhilarating. As she stepped into the light, she exhaled, feeling reborn. The dance began, and every movement expressed her liberation, her confidence, and her newly reclaimed future. When it concluded, countless eyes were upon her, and the audience burst into applause that resonated deep within her soul. Amidst shouts of admiration, tears glistened in her eyes, reflecting a sense of peace she had fought so tirelessly to achieve. With the letter tucked away in her heart, she felt the weight of Zhang's influence lift, the final remnants of their relationship no longer holding her captive. Li Weiwei had chosen to break free, shedding the skin of her old life for one full of promise. As she took her bows, she wheeled around to face her audience and knew that her journey had only just begun. In this new chapter, she embraced her power as a dancer, a storyteller, and a woman determined to forge her path. The future shimmered brightly ahead, filled with endless possibilities, and she welcomed it with open arms. In a world driven by ambition, the truth can unravel the most carefully constructed facades. Zhang Jianyu paced his high-rise office, his mind racing as the repercussions of his actions began to settle like an unwelcome fog. Li Weiwei had dared to take the stage and claim her truth, and in doing so, she had exposed the cracks in his polished veneer. He felt the shift in public perception as whispers crept in, muting his earlier accolades with accusations of manipulation and deceit. No longer was he the untouchable businessman, but a flawed man with a tarnished image. As the days passed, Jianyu attempted to wield his influence to control the narrative, avoiding interviews and concealing himself from the public eye. Yet the pressure only intensified. Critics lined up, eager to dissect every aspect of his character, revealing the cold detachment that had grown over the years. He watched from the sidelines as Li Weiwei burst forth into the limelight, her performances rooted in authenticity that spoke to a crowd hungry for sincerity. With each passing day, his regret deepened, gnawing at him like a persistent reminder of what he had lost. Drowning in feelings of betrayal and remorse, Zhang often found himself replaying the pivotal moments of their relationship in his mind. How he had underestimated her, convinced himself that she could thrive under the weight of his expectations without support. Memories flooded his thoughts. The night they first met at a dance gala, how her laughter had lit up the room, her unwavering commitment to her art, and the way she danced with an infectious passion that had enchanted him. That passion had faded, replaced by the shadows he had cast over her spirit. Struggling against the backdrop of his isolation, Zhang decided to confront his responsibilities head-on. In a rather unexpected twist, rather than retreating to anonymity, he agreed to a televised interview, driven by a need to reclaim some semblance of his narrative. As he sat on the set, the lights harsh and unyielding, he felt the weight of all his decisions crashing down upon him. "I made mistakes," he confessed, the sincerity in his voice contrasting the perfectly curated image he had clung to for so long. "I lost sight of what really matters. I have hurt the most important person in my life. And the truth is, I didn't realize how much I needed her until she was gone." That admission, raw and vulnerable, shifted the tides slightly. With every word, he acknowledged not only his failures, but the consequences that had reverberated through both their lives. Outside the studio, Li Weiwei watched the interview unfold, her heart racing as she heard his words. She had toyed with the idea of confronting him, confronting the pain that had lingered. But here he was, bearing his flaws publicly, seeking forgiveness. Part of her ached to respond, but she had come too far to let his regrets pull her back into that world. After the interview, Zhang Jianyu stepped out, facing the throngs of reporters who had gathered. He expected scrutiny, but what he received was mixed. Some applauded his willingness to admit fault, while others remained skeptical, uncertain if he had truly changed. As the melee continued, he caught a glimpse of a familiar figure in the crowd, Li Weiwei. In that moment, everything shifted. Zhang's heart raced as he prepared to approach her, but doubt flickered in his mind. Would it be too late? Would she see through the facade he had created? As he stepped forward, he observed her standing tall, surrounded by supportive friends who had rallied behind her through thick and thin. There was an undeniable spark of strength in her demeanor that he had almost forgotten existed. "Li Weiwei," he called out, urgency lacing his voice, desperately wanting her to hear him over the noise. She turned her gaze to him, a mixture of surprise and cautiousness reflected in her eyes. The crowd hushed momentarily as the two former lovers faced one another, separated by both their histories and the promises of redemption. "Zhang," she responded, steadying herself. "I saw your interview." "I meant every word," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "I was wrong to let you go, to dismiss the art and the passion that makes you who you are. Watching you rise after I failed you has shown me my own fragility. I understand now what I lost." For a heartbeat, time hung suspended between them. Li Weiwei felt a storm of emotions knit together, the hurt, the betrayal, but also relief in seeing him lay bare the wreckage. Yet, beneath it all, she felt herself standing more firmly than ever. "It took losing everything for you to see me, didn't it?" she replied, her voice unwavering. "You can't simply ask me to forgive you when I've worked so hard to become whole again." The words stung, but Jianyu nodded, accepting his role in that pain. "I understand. I don't expect forgiveness, not like that. But I want you to know that I see you now. I'm trying to change. You deserve every opportunity to thrive without my shadow." She noticed the sincerity in his eyes and the softness of his expression. It was a shift, a small sign of growth. Yet, as much as he had begun to grasp the impact of his choices, she also understood that healing took time. "Thank you for acknowledging that," Li Weiwei said, her heart heavy yet hopeful. "But I've closed that chapter. I wish you well, Zhang. Truly." With that, she turned away, stepping back toward the crowd that accepted and celebrated her growth. Zhang Jianyu watched her walk away, filled with a bittersweet mixture of pride and loss. She hadn't asked for him back. She had asked for herself, and now she owned her future in a way he could only admire from afar. As he stood alone, watching the applause surround her, a sense of understanding began to settle in. The road ahead would be challenging, paved with consequences. But perhaps, from this point forward, he could become a better version of himself, not just for her, but for the person he hoped one day to become. In the shadows of regret, he found a small flicker of hope, that maybe, just maybe, redemption awaited him if he continued to choose honesty, both with himself and those around him. The stage is set for a new beginning, and this time, Li Weiwei is ready to shine. With beams of vibrant light casting intricate shadows, she stands confidently, silhouetted against a backdrop reflecting her journey of resilience. After years of struggling with the weight of betrayal and public scorn, she has stepped into a fresh chapter of her life, surrounded by supportive friends and colleagues, each act of kindness fortifying her newfound strength. One sunlit afternoon, Li Weiwei sat in a rehearsal studio, laughter bubbling among her fellow dancers. After her triumphant performances had captured the hearts of the public, dance companies from near and far sought her out, welcoming her back to the world where she belonged. Her friends, each brimming with joy over Li's resurgence, helped her embrace this sense of belonging, their excitement palpable in every moment they shared. "You're a star now," one of them declared, her beaming smile a source of encouragement. But even amidst the jubilance, Li sometimes felt the shadow of her past flickering in the corners of her mind. Zhang Jianyu, with whom she had shared both dreams and betrayals, lingered like an unwelcome echo, reminding her of the hurt she had fought so hard to escape. In stark contrast, her new collaborators embraced authenticity and originality, a stark reminder of how different her future could be, one painted with possibilities and joy. Then came the moment that would test her resolve, making the decision to attend a gala where Zhang Jianyu would also be present. As she ironed her gown, she hesitated, her heart filled with uncertainty. How would she feel upon seeing him after all they had been through? But as her friend Mei encouraged her, "You've grown so much, Wei Wei. Own your beauty and your strength." Li found a renewed sense of determination. The night of the gala arrived, the buzz of anticipation electrifying the air. Wearing a gown that flowed elegantly with every movement, Li Weiwei felt like a phoenix, poised to rise from the ashes. Surrounded by admirers and supporters, she stepped into the grand hall, each breath filled with a combination of excitement and nervousness. And then she saw him, Zhang Jianyu, standing across the room. His aura was electrifying yet faintly hollow. He appeared impeccably polished, just as she remembered. But there was something undeniably different about him. As their eyes locked, memories washed over her, both sweet and bitter. In that instant, it all rushed back. The laughter, the dreams, the heart-wrenching moments of betrayal. Zhang Jianyu approached her, swallowing hard as he mustered the courage to speak. "You look incredible, Wei Wei," he began, his voice laden with emotion. "I've seen your performances and I—" "Stop," she interrupted, her voice steady. "I know what you're going to say. You don't have to pretend anymore. I've moved forward, and I'm leaving the past behind." The words were firm, but behind her calm facade lay a world of hurt she had overcome. He hesitated. Confusion mingled with regret etched on his features. "I see that now. I've come to terms with my mistakes, and No, you don't get to do this," Li replied, shaking her head. "True love cannot thrive under the weight of manipulation and deceit. I lost so much because of you, but I've rebuilt myself." The clarity in her voice revealed the extent of her transformation. As they stood amidst the gala, surrounded by glitter and laughter, Li Weiwei felt empowered. She was no longer the woman constrained by the shadows of their past. She was now someone who could advocate for herself, using her experiences to inspire others. In that moment, she chose to release the pain that had bound her, embracing the future she had fought so hard to claim. After their abrupt exchange, she walked away with a sense of finality. It was liberating to leave Zhang Jianyu behind, and as she took firm steps into the crowd of friends and supporters, the weight of their connection lessened. While Zhang Jianyu stood there, watching her mix with the jubilant crowd, a sinking realization settled in. He had lost not only Li Weiwei, but the essence of love itself. In perceiving the radiance she had regained, he felt the haunting emptiness of his choices. The applause that once filled his soul was now muted by the consequences of manipulation. He learned that true strength comes from the authenticity of relationships, something he had failed to understand when he had the chance. As the night wore on, Li Weiwei found herself laughing and dancing among her friends, the joy flooding back into her life. Here, under the shimmering chandeliers, she felt whole again. This was her moment and her stage, a space to express who she had become, free from the chains of her past. In the days that followed, she continued to thrive, her story inspiring many. Li Weiwei had become a beacon of resilience, and with every step she took into this new life, she paved the way for countless others, yearning to embrace their truths. She reveled in the knowledge that the future was filled with endless possibilities, finally ready to shine both on and off the stage without fear. Did this story of betrayal and resilience touch you? What would you do in Li Weiwei's place? Comment below, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories like this.